kind of excited at the moment with like how communities are evolving and how they're changing. Hopefully there's a movement towards making it easier for community managers and community builders to actually configure their communities to fit their needs. And so you'll get less communities all looking kind of the similar out of the box. I wanted to make sure that even though we're using a different platform, we are making it feel like a safe place. It's definitely a branded community.
Hello and welcome to the Digital Community Leaders Podcast, a conversation with community experts diving into their insights and leaving you with actionable ideas. Today we're joined by Lizzie Hipkins. Lizzie is a senior community manager at Android. She has worked within the membership community space since 2010. Before this role, she was head of community management at Airbnb. I'm excited to be chatting about Lizzie, all about the Android enterprise community. But before we do, a quick word from our sponsor.
This is the Digital Community Leaders Survey 2023. And this is the Digital Community Leaders Survey 2023 second edition. Back in 2023, we released a beautiful printed book. And due to its popularity, we sold out of printed copies. Rather than reprinting, we listened to your feedback and we included 40% more content in this copy. We created the report to be a data-backed handbook for building the foundations of your brand's community. For instance, did you know that 70% of communities we surveyed saw growth over the last 12 months? And we know those businesses are growing too. Other metrics we dive into include community growth, biggest pain points, community purpose, what are other community managers measuring, funding, participation, C-suite involvement, and much more. In this book, we present the data and expert insights from Richard Gott, Michelle Goodall, Vincent Boone, Keen Bakatari, Rosie Sherry, Matt Sullivan, Laura Roth, Nicole Saunders, Blaise Grimes-Vort, and Jan Carlisle. We've also included frameworks such as the community archetypes, ecosystem of impact, community participation ladder, and the community first culture nexus. There's so much in here, I can't wait for you to get your hands on this new edition. You can order your printed copy from Amazon today or download a digital copy for free at digitalcommunityleaders.com.
Hey Lizzie, it is great to have you with us. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, thank you. Yeah, thank you for having me here.
No, it is really good to have you. So Lizzie and I, ironically, we live surprisingly close to each other, but we met over in somewhat sunny California at CMX earlier in the year. So even though we live a short ferry away from each other, we flew halfway across the world to meet each other. But it was good to meet you there, and it's been good to meet you since. But yeah, I'm glad your day's going well.
Thank you. Yeah, not bad for a Wednesday.
Nice. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your role and kind of what you do at Android Enterprise?
Yes. So I run a community. It's a B2B community. It's called the Android Enterprise Customer Community. And basically, Android Enterprise is part of Android, which is my employee is Google. And basically, we're quite young community. We're about a year old now. And our audience is really those who are using Android devices at work, basically. So this could be a whole range of people. It could be you and me if you've got an Android device, and you're just accessing work apps on your phone. You might do it through something called the work profile if your device is managed through your company. Down to people who are using it for like really large companies. And you might have like dedicated devices. So you might have like kiosks and stuff. So sorry, down with the lingo here. But basically it's another way to like manage your devices and make sure they're secure and safe at the same time.
And was this your first community that you'd been running in kind of, I guess it's not quite DevRel, is it? But it kind of is. It's definitely in that technical space where it's maybe not, there was things to learn as you kind of jumped into the community. So is this your first kind of experience of that, or have you been in that place before?
Yeah, this is definitely a different type of community for me. My previous community was working on Airbnb's host community, which was a lot of fun. But yeah, this is a little bit more technical, even though it kind of ranges those people who are IT admins who might have a developer as well as their colleague, who would go into the really, really deep kind of technical stuff. But it depends on your size of company, because you might be someone who has like 5 hats on as well. But also those people who are using it on a day-to-day basis, so in employees as well. So that might not necessarily be so technical.
So for the community itself, like, what is the purpose of the community for Google? Like, what's the main success metric, or what's kind of the point of it?
So I think we sometimes get, and you may have even had this feeling sometimes, but Google is quite a large company. And so some people might find it hard to sometimes speak with us. And so one of the, I think, important elements of having this community is that even though a lot of our, if you want to buy an Android device, you go through a partner of ours, or if you want to set up a solution for managing your device as a company, you will go through one of our partners. So, but there's also a need for having a talk about Android specific stuff, Android enterprise specific stuff. So I think it's, we've kind of started out with the need of people needing answers to questions. So in that realm, we are kind of a help forum. But there's always that, if you have the aim of just being a place where you want to be more open, have more of a conversation with people, we're also seeing like people coming to give ideas, or they've come for a question and then they've gone, oh, actually, I would you mind adding this as well? Which is really nice to see. And I think it's definitely something that when I launched the community, I wanted to be able to have more of discussion with people to kind of find out and learn like how people are using the products. Because essentially, Android's always been quite an open source. It's at the heart of what we do. Yeah. So to have that conversation and make it easier for people to have that conversation directly with us is a really great thing for hopefully everyone who participates in the community.
Come for the answer, but stay for the people. I mean, with an organization like Google, when you arrive, is there like a handbook, like this is how we run community at Google, or was it very much still kind of working it out as you kind of go? Like I'm intrigued to know, because I'm aware when you may work at like a startup, it's very much all hands to the pump. You're kind of doing everything. Where I imagine at Google, there's a little more resource and maybe a little more nuance to the planning in place.
So, I mean, there are many teams across Google, different areas, and there are different types of communities as well. So, I mean, if you've ever needed to get an answer to anything Google related, I'm sure you would have landed on kind of the standard kind of Google community, help community. So I'm sure many of you have. So there's definitely a kind of history of having a place, and there's actually like a really good program called Product Expert Program, which really encourages people who love the products and know so much about it to come and actually help support the questions that are going on. And so there are lots of different types of communities, but in terms of my setting up, it's basically, it was quite down to me to kind of form where we were going to go, what the path, what's the aim of the community, and see how it grows. But what I like about it is because there are different communities, there's ways to kind of meet other community builders within the company, learn what they're doing, and see if there's anything that might fit your community and learn from each other. So that's something which is really, really, really nice. I like that a lot. Yeah,
it's interesting. So I didn't quite realize, but I think I've just caught on. You started on like day 0 of the community. Is that like you were there in almost like its inception?
Yeah, well, of the community that we have now. So before we actually had one of the forums that I mentioned, where kind of like Google help for support forums, and so that was live before me, and so it was a really good, like, I think it was only around for about a year and a half. But through that, it was a great test case to go, actually, there is traction here. There are people asking questions, and legitimate questions at that. How do we take that? And then, there's lots of things which weren't like, things which we could build on to kind of make the experience better for our specific audience. And so, we use that as a kind of trial base, and we had some really nice active users who've come onto our new community and have kind of carried on the journey. So it's actually quite nice to have a little bit of not a test case, but something where you kind of start from scratch and then go, okay, what's the learnings from this? And then build on that, hopefully.
Of your active, most engaged members, like, how are you keeping them engaged? Like, what is there incentives? Do they get special, I don't know, tags against their name? Like, what's the reason for them sticking around? Or is it a case of they like the environment and they're just happy to get involved? Or do you try and encourage it through other means?
Well, I think if you looked at the forum now, we are very much in the early stages of that. And I think there's lots more we have in the plan to do here. But I think, regularly talk to the active members and learn, like, why do they want to be part of this? I think they're strong believers in the product, which is usually where most kind of active users come from. If you like it, then you're going to stick around. But I think having that connection to the team and learning what's coming, and being invited to kind of contribute on certain areas and give feedback on it. Those are the kind of things which I think at the moment our active users are most interested in. But as we grow, I think that we're still quite small, really. But as that grows, I think there'll be different reasons why people come in and what areas they like specifically, and different interests will come through more.
You say you're small. There's currently 499 people online right now in your community, and I'm guessing that's members, not just people viewing.
It could be both, actually. Okay. Depending on which one you're looking at here.
Okay, depends on which metrics you're stalking.
Which metric you're looking at, yeah.
No, and it's the community inherently feels very Android. It doesn't feel stock. I'm not sure what platform we're using, but it doesn't feel stock like Gainsight or anything. It feels like it's been designed and put together. Is that still a continuation of trying to pull in resource maybe from other teams in terms of design and branding to make sure it feels inherently Android?
So it's run on we use the Chorus platform, but the branding, I had a very kind of clear view when I came in that I wanted to make sure that even though we're using a different platform, we are, making it feel like a safe place. It's definitely a branded community. So talking with our marketing team to kind of make sure that even down to like the URLs, which, sometimes can be quite tricky to get in larger companies as well, fit the branding. And I think it was halfway through last year, actually, that we actually did a new branding from Android. Our Droid became a little bit more realistic and viewing. It's something where we had to kind of rethink a little bit some of the designs that we came, and are going to do more so towards the end of this year as well. But the reason I wanted it to make it look like it's on brand is just that consistency across everything, making it feel like a trusted space to be in, a place where you will be able to talk with the other people officially, in a sense.
Talk to me about the levels next to somebody's username. I've clocked that they are versions of Android, which is very clever. Yeah. So you start on 1.0 or 1.1?
1 point, you're testing me now. I think 1.0 we start on.
Okay. And then as you
go
get
up.
involved...
And the reason, because we kind of basically have level, whatever it is, 1.0, and then the name of the launch. If we just put lollipop, which is like the name for it, people won't necessarily, unless you're very techie, know that you're moving up the level necessarily. Yeah. So that's why we've got the levels in there still at the moment.
Nice. So we've chatted a little bit about why people kind of find you and kind of get stuck in. And we've talked a little bit about why maybe what people are getting, like staying around, but let's chat about that more. Like, what is it that you're kind of actively pursuing, or what's on your like roadmap of things that you're trying to organize to keep people engaged? And like, so it's not just, you know, Lizzie answering questions left, right and center. Actually, there's a good bunch of folk who are getting stuck in and welcoming new folk, and, you know, not just kind of palming it off to the Google team.
So I think it's a mixture of things. So not, you know, we have people, our active members, that come in daily. I feel like sometimes they might like have a time in the day that they might come in, you know, these people that have busy lives at the same time. So, you know, sometimes, so they will kind of go in and just naturally answer it if they feel like it's something that they're interested in. But I think, you know, with a new community, it's sometimes bringing new people in is tricky. And I think, so it's almost like the first step, unless you're quite confident and you've been in a forum lots of times before. But if you start to learn about people's interests, and maybe they've come in with a question, they've mentioned something in their post about, you know, we tried this and we've done this. You know, maybe you have a similar post, another question down the line that someone comes in and you're like, oh, that person actually did know it. So actually, like tagging someone in, I know it sounds quite simple, but kind of like, or messaging them privately and say, hey, like, I know you've mentioned this before and you had a really good point there. Do you have any views to kind of go on to this? So I think, you know, there's like little things here that just, you know, you as a community manager, you almost like, your brain starts to kind of map all this stuff out, and you remember like random things, or you know, you document it, and then you're just bringing these connections together, really. And I think over time, if you know, building that gradually grows, and more people kind of just do it themselves. And then I think, so there's little things like that. I think it's easy to kind of overlook that a little bit and just kind of go, I have to change the platform lots and lots of times. I have to do this with tech and stuff. But actually, like, community managers have, you know, a really important role to kind of, to just bring those early connections. And I think, you know, if you can send welcome messages and you can give people a purpose or a kind of starting point, that all helps to blend together.
I'm keen to chat about kind of the maybe more disruptive side of things in a second, when it might become to spam and stuff. But how do you encourage your maybe new members to A, use the search box, or B, ask really high quality questions where they're giving enough information that it's easy for someone to give a high quality answer? Because I've been in situations in communities where somebody doesn't give you enough information. You're like, I'm here and I'm willing to answer, but I don't want to have this back and forth over like 3 hours trying to just draw stuff out of you. I kind of need everything all at once so I can just crack on with my day. Like, how do you encourage that kind of good behavior?
I think, I mean, sometimes if you get really, really short posts, I think you kind of question whether they're serious about trying to find an answer. And so, or you need to kind of entice it back. It's funny, like, I think go back to community management, but you're kind of there to enforce the practices that other community members will learn. So, you know, you'll find that if you kind of go in there and say, oh, I think you're asking about this, could you give us a few more details? Can you maybe structure it like this? You'll find that over time, other people will kind of replicate that, I think. Or they'll say, oh, can you use the search bar? And, you know, maybe you can also talk to your active members and say, hey, like, can you maybe ask these questions and stuff if you're getting stuck with seeing the same things over and over. In terms of people using the search bar, I think this is the ongoing question. It's like, and I think this is also down to the community as well. Like, whether you see this, I think really small ones won't necessarily have this problem to begin with, or if you're really starting out. And then, but I think, I actually saw a community the other day, I can't remember what it was, and they literally just had very, very plain homepage where it was literally like the search bar and that was it, and so you kind of get the gist of what you're trying to do there. Search for first, and then the next prompt is to really explore. So I don't know. I think also you can get better with your searches as well. So when people do search, they find more relevant answers. You can train your search to have like populated answers. Maybe you can have widgets on the side of your homepage, which is like prompting people, or go into those kind of most frequent questions that you're seeing people ask all the time, and maybe create an FAQ or ask people to create a guide on certain things so that actually appears higher up than other things. I think there's a number of different ways you could try out, see if anything happens, which improves it. And, even ask your community members, like, you're seeing this a lot. Do you have any ideas on how we can improve this? And you might be surprised with the kind of range of things that you get back.
I was in a open source community recently, and I think it's run primarily by one person. I think he was probably getting on the more tired side of things, because before you could post a new thread, you had to tick a box which said, I've used this format of my question. And the second box was, I have searched for the problem first before you could even post. I was like, that is a person who is tired of answering the same question. It's not the most elegant of behavior nudgings, but it's definitely a way of doing it. In terms of when you're kind of seeing maybe similar patterns of questions coming through, is it your role to then kind of pass that through to product managers, or are they actively kind of seeking from you things that they could be working on, or is it a kind of a two-way street?
So you're talking about if people are highlighting like an issue or a product feature they'd like to see. Is that the kind of things that you're talking about?
Both, I guess. Yeah. Like, how involved are the Android product team themselves involved in, I guess, listening for things that could be improved, or bugs, or new features that they're keen to see?
So I think, we're still developing these out. I think it's still early days, but we have had some really good examples already. Even in the early stages, we had a really nice kind of end kind of win, I would say. The other day, we had a thread which was created in February, and lots of feedback in there, and actually quite a lot of back and forth between people. Great discussion, really some great ideas. And so, I'm quite active in that thread, to try and get people to tell me more about what's going on. But there were some really good learnings in this. So I fed this back to a few of our product team. And then the next stage was to kind of talk. We got some calls sorted out with a few of the people, which then, long story short, eventually we actually have made a change based on community feedback, which... being a community manager for a while, like, sometimes you can send information back and it's just not possible, or it doesn't get to the right people, or it's so big a thing, and how do you manage it? So it doesn't always go like this, but so I feel like we have to celebrate the wins at all occasions. So this was really fantastic, and it really reflected well on the community as well, and people were pleased that they've been listened to. So, but I think as you grow and you have more feedback, depending on what kind of community you are building, it's really important to have good processes behind the scenes. Like the amount of times people are like, oh, let's have an ideas board. And you're like, yes, let's have an ideas board. And actually the easiest part is to have the functionality in the community. And, but the hardest part is all the processes and actually like behind the scenes stuff within the company to set that up so that, you don't have a tool that actually causes more frustration for end users, like for community members even. So I think it's the same with like feedback loops with product teams or, any other teams that you might need. It might be that you have to escalate any issues, if depending on your community, and you need to have feedback with like a support team, for example, having those processes in place so you know exactly what to do, when to do it, how to go back to the community, and you're managing expectations on both sides. So I think that's that kind of sets you up for success. Doesn't mean that that's not an ongoing process. Like you might have something quite basic at the beginning, and then as you learn more, or you see different situations come up, you change that. But it's important if your community team grows as well.
Tell us a little bit about that win. Let's go into that win in a bit more detail, Lizzie. I think I found it on the forum, but what I'm really intrigued about is the way that the accepted solution is at the top. And well, let's go into it. So somebody raised something. There was then, it's had a lot of views, kind of 20,000 views. It's had 56 people kind of going back and forward in conversation. A lot of it you've been facilitating. And then at the end, Melanie, who is from the Google team, product manager has come through. And I think that's a really lovely way. So let's go into that in a bit more detail, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
I think the bit I'm really intrigued about is the way Melanie's come in and kind of summarized how you've highlighted it to her. And it's a really, really well-written piece of communication from herself. Was that quite a long time coming, or like, tell us more?
I think, in terms of the thread, it is, you'll see that it started in February. And so, as I mentioned, like there was a lot of like back and forth and between that times trying to raise this information. And I think, like Melanie's a really fantastic product manager and really lucky to be working with her. And she really wants to hear from community members. She wants to hear from customers, how they're using products. So she's just fascinated in that sense. So the fact that she was like, you kind of discussed like, what's better for me to post it, or if you're happy to post it, then, we've also got to be conscious of like her time. And, this is the same as if you have any kind of, any like team members or, senior team members in your team, in your company that come into the community to kind of engage with members. So making sure that like, if we had any follow-up, she was not going to be bombarded with those questions, which then are tricky to handle, was probably just the first thing that I raised to her. But she was really, really open to posting and giving an update. And she's been working with other team members, engineering teams to kind of get a change here. So yeah, it's exciting. It's great to see.
And having someone like that involved, I guess, brings validation to the original poster. They feel like they've been seen, listened to over the last kind of 6 months, but also to yourself in that role. You're not kind of in this void of just Android Enterprise in its kind of silo. Actually, there is outside help that will kind of come in. And I guess it must have been quite validating to have someone kind of come in and I guess share that with you.
Yeah, really nice. Really, really nice. I think it's a partnership, isn't it? Really, everything that you want to represent the community members and their points as well as possible. And sometimes, you'll see in that thread, I have to go back and be like, hey, can you help me to really represent what you're saying here back to the team? And actually we did have some calls with, as I mentioned, with some of the members to kind of just give us examples or things that, we can take to certain teams to say, hey, like this is what we're seeing. Here's some examples. This is the quotes that we've got the community. And this is the numbers as well, because I think data is important. So I think And then vice versa, there's a lot of parties involved in getting like, updates on things. And so I think, being able to, there was more people involved than just, what's represented in that post as well. That's, if you want to make a difference, this is how you got to work with lots of different processes and people and things behind the scenes.
So that was a really good example of kind of, I guess, a great outcome. How do you deal with, maybe on a day-to-day basis, but also maybe on like a philosophical basis, how do you deal with like spam and like just terrible posts where people are kind of wanting the world and you can't give it to them, or they're literally just posting just pure spam or marketing themselves? Like how do you deal with that?
Yeah. So I think if we're talking specifically about spam, like I think most often the cases that I've seen, they're not really, there's not really a lot of hope that you're going to be able to talk with these people and turn them into great community members. That's not really their aim when they're posting something which is completely off topic multiple times, and they're just trying to be disruptive for whatever reason they're doing. So I think the processes that you kind of go through there is, it links back for me back to like the health and the foundational stuff that you have to have in the community to make sure that it's a space that people want to engage in. That's probably the most important thing, for welcoming experience. And so if you've got someone who's spamming and you're getting loads of notifications and you're like, it's really annoying, it's really disruptive. So I think that's when it goes to, you've got to look at what things you can prevent this from even getting there. So maybe it's a platform, a technical thing. Most communities would have like a spam quarantine or spam filter or both. And so if you see those things coming up, you would hope that would kind of kick in to help prevent large amounts of it. There's probably a good discussion to have with your platform provider to be like, your platform team to be like, okay, what are we going to do here? What's our problems here? Yeah. And then if you just get like casual stuff, maybe there's going back to the kind of like the quality content of a post, like most quality posts are more than one word. so having like being able to have good titles, like limiting titles and having some things within the post to kind of prevent just images posting on their own without any context or just one word answers to things. So but you've got to find that balance because like it's like if you have like a swearing filter, sometimes you might have the best community member, but they they're just a bit animated sometimes, they might spawn, and so then you've got a bleep on it which looks sometimes a bit worse. So you've got to find that balance. I think spam is usually a lot more obvious and something you would how to deal with, but and you can turn this into a positive thing, I think. So with your active community members, you can maybe there's things where like if you're a new member you can't do certain actions until you get to a certain level. So some spam comes through DM. It's very hard for a community manager to manage that. I feel that sometimes platforms could do a bit have a few more helpful tools there. I'm generalizing, but sometimes it's quite difficult through DMs. So yeah.
So I think you started on the Airbnb platform in 2015.
Yeah.
So coming up to 9-10 years, have you seen technology advance and assist you over the last 9 years when it comes to spam? Like, has it got better, or are we kind of still dealing with tools which are maybe slightly outdated, and maybe in a world where AI could write you 1,000-word blog post in 4 seconds? Maybe we haven't quite caught up in regards to dealing with spam. And I'm talking platform agnostic. We're not talking about just the platform you use for this, obviously.
I think, I imagine that like the tools that are kind of within a lot of spam filters, whether they're like in-house or third-party spam providers, I imagine they have come on in that 10-year period. Oh gosh, 10 years. Then you would hope that they would change. I think the tools for community managers, like, I don't know, I think it's kind of hard without trying to just kind of generalize to like one called specific examples. But yeah, I think there are improvements that could be made to kind of add more tools for community managers to make it easier.
Lizzie wants more help with DM spam.
More help with DM spam. Oh gosh. But you know, there are things and platforms that can stop that. So I do think like it's down to us to kind of problem solve sometimes. And if you can, you know, if DM is a tool which is a privilege in a community, then, you know, maybe actually work with your community members or your active ones to say, like, is this something you would actually use much? I think, you know, maybe there's some communities that don't use DMs that much between each other.
Last question. Outside of the community you run, which online community are you most active in?
Ooh, well, active. I have to say I'm not like that active in terms of posting in many forums outside of what I'm doing. I have to say, and this is the same, been the case for a long time in terms of like when I was on the Airbnb community, I'd literally just be absolutely fascinated by the comments that were coming in. And, you know, there's only so many minutes in the day. But I think I do kind of look at, I love looking at other communities and just kind of looking at their UX, looking at their answers. So I do look at quite a lot of forums. I don't think there's like any specific ones which I call out too much. Yeah, I'm kind of excited at the moment with like how communities are evolving and how they're changing. Like, I think the way that hopefully there's a movement towards making it easier for community managers and community builders to actually configure their communities to fit their needs. And so you'll get less communities all looking kind of the similar out of the box, and you'll have like more personalized to the experience that they're giving, and maybe like tools that you would have to pay for, or there'd be added extra things like banners and things like that. Are just kind of they're kind of in there, you know, they're just standard. So it just makes it easier to do what you want to do. Sorry that I'm digressing a little bit off that, but yeah, I think I'm not super active in many outside of what I'm doing in my day to day, but I do look at it a lot. Thank you so much for joining me today, Lizzie. I really do appreciate it, and thanks for going pretty deep on the Android enterprise community and into the weeds. But sometimes it's good to get into the weeds and chat about the nitty gritty of what it's actually like running these sorts of things, rather than just like kind of like a high level, because the detail is interesting to lots of people. So I do appreciate your honesty and openness. No worries. Thank you for having me. Fantastic. Cool. I'm sure I will see you around at some point. And for everyone else, I will see you next week. Cheers.
We are Steadfast Collective. We exist to craft digital applications that bring people together. A team of smart creatives, we are excited by technology, and we always aim to leave the internet in a better place than we found it. Working with many of the UK's leading communities, we use technology as an accelerator to help them grow and engage their members. Our applications resource membership organisations, grow businesses, and create value. We know what it takes to ship, market, and scale applications, and we apply this wealth of background knowledge to everything we do. We're not just another agency, we are community builders.